Bonsuelo Mathletes, beginning of a new, very, very short chapter. So don't get behind in the homework because this is going to be over like in about 2 minutes. But it's exciting. It's the beginning of another chapter, another chance to excel. Okay, what we're going to do is there was stuff back in at the very beginning of Alex that I took and put it now. Why? Because it didn't belong back at the beginning of the year. It was kind of like in course readiness, they called it chapter 0. But you know what? It didn't really do you any good back then. You need to know this stuff now. So there's going to be just this chapter 0 homework. It'll just be homework. But this is really the beginning of chapter 4. Okay, so when you eventually get to the chapter test, and this is the last chapter, this will be the last test. Chapter 0 and chapter 4 together. Okay, the two ideas in chapter 0 are multiplication and mainly factoring. Again, if you don't know what a factor is, I don't know that I can really help you because I've talked about factors so much it's scary. But I do want to mention something. You know, there's a term, which is a thing that's added or subtracted. A factor is a thing that is multiplied. That's a noun. So when I talk about factoring, that's a verb. What I'm asking you to do is pull something apart into things that are multiplied. So you're taking something and making it into factors. Okay, also, this is the opposite of simplifying. Okay, simplify means combine. Factor means pull it apart. Now, it doesn't mean just pull it apart because you don't need to write this part down, but let's say take 6 and I pull it into part, let's call it 4 plus 2. Okay, that's not factoring. Yeah, it's pulling it apart, but it's pulling it apart into things that are added. Factoring means you take 6 and you call it 2 times 3. Okay, that's factoring. So what we're doing is we're going to be taking polynomials and factoring them. We're going to spend a lot of time, but the first thing we're going to do in this video is talk about multiplication. Okay, first of all, back at the beginning of the year, I told you there's no such thing as cross multiplication. And I don't know, if you're still cross multiplying, you really don't understand what you're doing. There is no such mathematical operation as cross multiplication. There is multiplying by the lowest common denominator. Well, I'm going to tell you something else that doesn't exist. Foil. Foil is something you put around a turkey at Thanksgiving in order to cook it. Okay, foil is not a mathematical operation. What there is the distributive property. Okay? Now, you can do this in your head. I'm kind of showing some work here, but you don't really need to show me any work on the simple stuff. So what do? You take the first term in this factor and you distribute it. And you get 10x squared minus 14x. Then you take the second term and you distribute it. And you get 15x minus 21. And someone says, wow, that looks like FOIL to me. Okay, I can't stop you from using FOIL. Go ahead. But you know what? If you get everything perfectly right, go ahead. I can't stop you. But don't come and ask me a question unless you're going to do it this way. Okay? Because I'm telling you, there's no such thing as FOIL. Okay, and then you just combine everything. Now, I realize, and you should be able to do this problem in your head. Okay, so I'm just making sure you understand what to do. Okay, so for those of you that like to use FOIL on the second problem, go ahead and FOIL it. Go ahead. Well, of course you can't because there's no such operation as FOIL. There's the distributive property of multiplication over addition. But the thing I want to get across here is this. It's being neat, okay? And what I want you to do is stack like terms vertically. Now, what do I mean by that? I'll show you. I'm going to take this first term and distribute it to the second factor. So we have 2x to the 5th minus 3x to the 4th plus 7x cubed minus 4x squared. Okay, fine. Excuse me. Okay, now I'm going to take the second term, and distribute it. Now, when I give it to the 2x cubed, I get 10x to the 4th. Don't string this out and call this plus 10x to the 4th. Okay, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying you're just going to get the problem wrong because you're making the problem too complicated looking. What you want to do is stack like terms vertically. So what does that give you? 10x to the fourth. So I stick it under the other x to the fourth. And then that becomes negative 15x to the third. And then that becomes 35x squared. And then negative 20x. Okay, and then we'll distribute this third one. And we get 6x cubed, so we'll stick that under the x cubes, minus 9x squared, plus 21x minus 12. And you will make far fewer mistakes if you do it this way. So now we'll combine. So we have 2x to the fifth plus 7x to the fourth. And that's going to be what? Minus 2x cubed. And then that's going to be negative 13 and 35 is plus 22. And then plus x minus 12. Now, you may be asking yourself, and I understand exactly what you're saying, I thought you said we were going to be factoring. No. Well, we are going to be factoring. But remember, there are two things we're doing, multiplication and factoring. Factoring is the next thing. So now what are we doing today? We're simplifying, okay? So we're simplifying. We're combining things. Next time, we'll pull things apart, okay? All right. Now, can you square each one individually? In other words, give the square to each of these. No, you can't. Why? Because again, I told you at the very beginning of the year, a very good rule of thumb to remember is whatever shortcut you want to take, you can't do it if you see a plus or minus. So I'll give you some examples that I've given you before. 10 plus x, don't write this down, over 5. Can I cancel the 5 and the 10? No. Why? Because there's a plus sign. But what if it was 10 times x plus 5? Can I cancel the 5 and the 10? Yes. Why? Because there is no plus sign. What if I give you the square root of 16 plus 9? Can I take the square root of each one individually? No. Why? Because there's a plus sign. But what if it's the square root of 16 times 9? Can I take the square root of each one individually? Yes, because there's no plus sign. So that's the same as 4 times 3, which would be 12. Of course, this first one would have been the square root of 25, which is 5. And then the what I mentioned up here, this thing, you can't do anything with it. That's all review. I've shown you those problems before, okay? I'm just kind of reminding you of something. Why am I reminding you of it? Because do you see a plus sign here or a minus sign? Well, hopefully you see it. If you don't, I don't really know what to do for you. But what if it said this? X plus 7 squared. Can I take the square and give it to each one? No, I can't. But what if it says 7x squared? Can I take the square and give it to each one and just call it 49x squared? Sure you can. Why? Because there's no plus or minus. Every shortcut you've ever been shown in math is not a rule, but every shortcut you've been shown in math is for multiplication. It's not for addition and subtraction. Okay, so let's do this problem. By the way, maybe I should say this. What do you do then with x plus 7 squared? You take x plus 7. What does it mean to square something? You don't need to write any of this down yet. You just multiply something by itself. I'm not going to do that. You should know how to do that. Okay, so let's take this problem then. I'm just trying to remind you, no shortcuts if there's a plus or minus. So what does it mean to square something? You take something and you multiply it by itself. Okay, and it's just the distributive property. If you want to FOIL it, go ahead. You can't, of course, because there is no mathematical operation FOIL, but whatever. Okay, so we have x squared, so that's x to the fourth plus 3x cubed minus 7x squared. And then we'll take the 3x and distribute it. So we have 3x cubed plus 9x squared minus 21x. And then we'll take the negative 7 to distribute it. So we'll get negative 7x squared minus 21x plus 49. And again, stack like terms vertically. Okay, so we get x to the fourth plus 6x cubed. And then that's going to be negative 14, so it's negative 5x squared minus 42x plus 49. Okay, just, tedious grunt work is all it is. There's no trick to it. Okay, I want to make sure you understand something. Is it possible to multiply 2 times 3 times 7? Now, I'm not trying to be tricky here, but no, your brain can't do it. You may think you can, but you can't. What you can do is multiply 2 of them together and then take the answer to that, and then you don't need to write this down. This is not the problem we're doing, okay? But the point I'm trying to make is your brain can't multiply 3 things simultaneously. All it can do is take 2 things, multiply it, and then multiply it by the third one, or fourth, or however many there are. Okay, well, can I distribute the cube? No. Why? Because there's a minus sign. So what does it mean to cube something? It means multiply it by itself 3 times. I mean, that's pretty much about all I can say about it. It just means cube it. So what are we going to do? We're going to take 2 of them, any 2 of them, doesn't matter which 2, and multiply them. So I'm going to take these first 2, and you should be able to do in your head. So that's x squared minus 10x plus 25 times x minus 5. Now, at this point, I want to mention something. You don't have to now take the first one and give it to the second one. It's okay if you do. It really makes no difference. But I always like to give the smaller one to the larger one. And notice the second one is smaller. The second factor is smaller than the first factor. So I'm going to distribute the x to the first factor and get x cubed minus 10x squared plus 25x. Then I'm going to take the negative 5 and distribute it. So we get negative 5x squared plus 50x minus 125. And again, you should be trying these. If you're not trying these on your own before you see me do it, you're not really getting everything you should get out of these videos. Okay? Now, if you don't know how to do it, fine. Go ahead and, watch me do it. But you should always try it on your own first. Okay? All right. Now, that's about it. Pretty simple, just distributive property, nothing special. Again, what we're doing today is simplifying. We're combining. Next time, what we're going to do is we're going to take this problem and change it back into that. Okay? In other words, we're going to take something and pull it apart into things that are multiplied. We're going to take this answer and pull it apart into the original problem. We're going to take this answer and pull it apart into the original problem, et cetera, et cetera. We're doing the opposite of what we did today, okay? And make sure you listen to the video because most people think they know how to factor. And what they taught you before was good enough for Algebra 1 or good enough for grammar school, but it's not good enough here because the problems get more complicated than they do in grammar school or your freshman year of high school. So see you in a little bit. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.